Hi and welcome back to my MyAniMATE3 videos. So today we're going to take a look at some more animation features from Maya. So it's like a quick tip kind of video here, and we're going to keep it simple. All right, it's going to be just a hand wave animation kind of tutorial. So yeah, we're going to use a couple of MyAniMATE features. So we're going to use the IK to create the first pose to make it easier, but then we'll just use the FK animation. So yeah, let's take a look at how we can leverage this, and let's bring the arm up like that, and make sure that we have a first initial pose that we can use, and then also the shoulder goes up a little so that the thing does not look completely broken. And this one a little bit more on the front. All right, so something like this to start with. So bringing my animate back here in the animation tools, we're going to match the FK to the IK pose. And right, I need to select something in the limb, otherwise the script doesn't know what to look for, and match FK to IK. And we can turn off the IK. So we have an FK initial pose that was made quickly with the help of the IK. All right, so let's select everything that we want to keyframe. So there will be only 4 controllers for this. And let's make sure that we have a 2 seconds animation. So I'm going to switch to 30 FPS. And I'll go for a 61 frames. So again, like from the previous video, 30 frames make a second because it's 30 FPS, which means that if I want 2 seconds animation, it needs to be 60 frames. We start from 1 plus 60 is equal to 61. So these are going to be just rotations. So Shift E to set a keyframe there. And I'm going to set the same keyframe over there. All right. And then just in the middle, I'm going to set that same keyframe again. So yeah, what I'm going to animate mainly is these two. And probably if we do that from the front, we can use the outer circle so that the rotation is parallel to our view instead of being aligned to the local rotation. Or otherwise, we could also switch to the world rotation like that. So we can do this, and when this one gets lower, so the elbow goes under the shoulder height, we also put the clavicle down a bit. Select everything, Shift E. So, I did a mistake there. So let's move here. 1 and 2. Lower it like this. Okay, grab these 3. Shift E, and I'm going to also keyframe this one so that it keeps its rotation. All right, and then we do some more these two and this. Definitely not a perfect animation, but it's going to work. All right, so if we play back, you will see that there is a moment where it just stops when it begins, when it ends and then begins again. The pose is the same, so it looks like it's stuttering, right? So yeah, let's see how we can loop this correctly. And so we go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor, and this is the thing. Let's begin with the clavicle, and you can see here that the out curve from the keyframe is going kind of flat and then goes down, whilst the in curve in the last frame, which basically is this one here in a loop, is instead going flat, goes down and then goes flat. This is what we have to manipulate next. So I'm going to make this curve meet this other curve. Now, if we do this like this, unfortunately, it's just a guesswork, and we aren't actually sure of what is going on at that point. So what we could do is to select everything here as a curve, and then we go to the menu curve and we activate pre-infinity cycle. So it basically keeps going automatically, and then post-infinity cycle. If you cannot see the infinity pre and post, you might need to activate the view of the infinity. So let me see where that is. Infinity over here. It needs to be ticked on. So if that's off, whether it is active or not, and it is definitely active, you see we go beyond the keyframe and it keeps animating. But here it's not visible, then under view, infinity is off, you need to have it on. So if we go back here, this will help us align the in and out curves over here. So if we select these frames and hit F to frame it, we will have a better proportion view there. And you can see that this is like a disrupted curve. And I want to have something that goes smoothly towards the next keyframe. So I will keep this as a reference, and then I will adjust this one so that it flows into the next frame, the next section of the curve. Just notice as these little tangents, these little arms, these little handles, basically go through the in the same direction as the curve that we want to manipulate, and that ensures that the thing here is actually smoothly looping. Now see how this curve here is not smooth. So I grab that keyframe, then one of the two handles, and adjust it so that the curve is smooth, really nice and smooth. Okay, and this needs to be done on all of the animated curves. So on the clavicle, just one. Let's quickly do that on, oopsies, on all of the keyframes. What's going on there? Oh, that's why. I selected all of the keyframes and hit F. You can see that's not really a big curve. All right. So let's grab everything again. All right. I don't know what happened, but now it started behaving as it should. Nice. All right, this one looks like it's okay like this, since it flows nicely end to begin. I would just go ahead and smooth out. You see how this is like a peak? I want to smooth it out a little bit so it's more rounded. And I would do the same here. And I guess this is fine. Okay, so the result, something's wrong here. Yes, definitely wrong. So what happened? That's the x-axis. Let's do this. And that should take care of it, yes. Okay, so if we play now, you see that it is smoothly going through the end and back to the beginning. Now there will still be some little stuttering there because first and last frame are the same, so you will see the same pose duplicated basically once at the end and once at the beginning. So to display it correctly, you just remove either side frame, right? You don't have to worry about that with the export because the export already takes care of this issue. It's just for you to see how that loops. All right, cool. So let's bring this back to 61. And this was the very first tip. Now, sometimes it's good to not have too many keyframes on the same curve because as soon as you start adding more and more detail, the overlapping, so the technique where you're not allowing the joints, the controllers, to be animated all at the same time, is not going to work well. And adding more and more keyframes may start adding some issues, which is not this case, but this gives me the opportunity to introduce you to a tool for traditional rigs like this that is available here in the channel box layer editor. Just next to the display layers that we all know, there's an anim layer, and usually it's empty. Okay, so in here we can add layer objects to an animation layer, where we could do basically two different things. Let's begin with the most basic. So I'm going to select everything that I want to add to this new animation layer. And as you can see here, we have a few buttons. So you can, if you have multiple layers, you can put them one on top of the other and switch them around. Then you have a create empty layer, and the last one is create layer from selected, which is what we want to do now. So I'm going to click that, and you can see that we have a base animation, the one that we have just created, and now anim layer that you can see is the current active one. And with that one selected, if we go here, the graph editor looks like it's empty, as well as the timeline down here. But when we go back to base animation, our base animation is back. All right, so let's move on to the anim layer, and you can see when you switch, the currently active layer is green, right? Which means that whatever we're going to do next is going to be applied or added to this layer. Now the default behavior of a layer, right click, is to be a so-called additive layer. So we can add other stuff to the layer at a later time. We can remove things, and then we have here the layer mode that by default is additive, which means that whatever animation we're going to add, that we are going to put on this layer, is going to be added to the base animation, which is super cool. because what we're going to do now is start adding keyframes. So rotate, rotate, right, and say that here in the middle we want to have a different rotation here. This was going down, right? So so what we're doing now is adding a layer for overlapping, a secondary set of motions on the arm, which helps selling a more natural effect and not that robotic as it was before. Right, now also for this layer, we should make sure that we are, okay, select both of those that we have animated here, and it tells you that you are on anime layer number 1. We should make sure to have nice and smooth curves so that it looks organic. Like that. Okay. Next up. Nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. And here we have the same problem as before. These are not going to loop. So, no, not base animation. Let's grab them like this. Select all. Curves, pre-infinity cycle, curves, post-infinity cycle. Okay. So these are going to loop correctly. This one might need some extra care. These are fine. Cool. Let's fix this one. All right. Okay. Let's see this one. Good. Like that. And then always ensuring that we have a nice blended kind of curve-like shape. While adjusting on one side, if the keyframe and the tangent are visually in the way, while you're moving this, look at the other side. So that's looking good. This is also nice and smooth. So now, if we play this back, again, as before, there's an extra frame within Maya. And you can see it's nice and smooth. Now, you can keep these things as they are and have, the exporter export the visual representation, and that would be fine. But at some point, you could even just go in and select these two layers, right-click, and then merge layers, open the option box, layers hierarchy selected, and merge to bottom selected layer, which is the base animation. If we had more than one layer, you could merge the top, right, onto the bottom, so merge to the bottom, or the bottom into the top. So yeah, let's apply that. And now we have a baked animation. So now that you have everything baked like this, you can keep going adding more layers. You don't have to worry about the number of keyframes that you have there, and basically being an overwhelming number of frames to modify things, right? It's pretty easy to add another additive layer and have that modified with regular keyframes. which is nice. Now let's add these two also to another layer. Let's see this time the other type of layer. So the layer mode, this time we set it to override, and you will see that basically all the rotations go back to 0. And you would say, yeah, that means that I have to restart animating from scratch. Well, no. Here we have a weight, which is like the opacity of that layer. So if we bring that back to 0 and we have this layer selected, if we hit Shift E to add a keyframe and bring the weight back up like this, that pose has been registered on this new layer. Okay, so if you play now, you will see that the clavicle that wasn't added to this layer is still affected by the base animation as one would expect. While this override layer is overriding the animation underneath with this one single pose. Now you can keep animating and whatnot, but as you will see here, the opacity will help increasing or decreasing the amount of influence that the that the override layer has. So opacity at 0, it's exactly what we had before. If we want to tone it down, for example, we can use this technique by increasing the weight of this override layer that basically is just one pose. Now also this weight, basically the opacity, can be keyframed. So let's set it to 0 and keyframe it. Now you will see that under these we also have the weight value. Okay. So here has a value of 0. We go here and we keyframe it as well. A value of 0. Now we have a curve. Right? It's just straight with the same value, so it's fine, but we can go in, keyframe, 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 and you can see that there is some effect going on there, which you can manipulate here in the graph editor as well. Okay, so I'm going to set the pre-infinity and post-infinity so that we can ensure nice looping, which in this case is going to look like real crap as a final result. But this is to illustrate the two tools that you can use there. Okay. So you can even have a secondary animation that is not the waving, right? That can kick in, override completely whatever the base animation was, and then go down and blend into the original animation. Now, in this case, this definitely sucks, but you get the point. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going to keep this. So I'm going to select that stuff and delete it. And I will also delete this one. Oh, by the way, you can lock things, so things cannot be changed, not even by mistake. You can mute the layer when it's active. And you can even solo the layer, so you can see only the effect of that layer if we had another set of layers. Okay, you would never see the effect of the other one. The other ones on top. The base animation is always going to be seen, even if it's soloed. So let's delete this. We don't need that anymore. And we have a nice modifiable animation using the layers over there. Another thing, let's stop this. Another thing that you could do is to create another layer and make sure that this is set to additive. It's fine like that. And yeah, let's do what we've done before. we add this. Okay, so it's more exaggerated, but it's still following the same pattern and same structure, right? So if I go to Windows, again, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, make sure that we are there. Everything seems to be looping correctly. Just to make sure, let's select both animation layers, everything selected. I'm going to again use pre-infinity, post-infinity, right? And if I now move these using the W and holding down Shift, middle mouse click and drag sideways, you see what I'm able to do here. I can shift the thing along the timeline so that the effect is completely different. Well, now it's kind of bad, so I'm shifting it the other way around. Let's see what it gives us. All right. Okay. Now you could just bake it and just notice what happens here to the post and pre-infinity. So when I'm going to merge, so select the two, and then merge the layers, again, as before, we can do bottom selected layers. Instead of doing sample by one, so one keyframe per frame, we could just go in by two, for example. Or we could use the Smart Bake, which diminishes the number of frames. Let's try that. Okay, let's take one by one here. You will see that these frames here, where there was need of more fidelity for the curve, have been placed at a distance of one frame, right? If there was a simpler type of animation, the number of keyframes would have been diminished with a Smart Bake. By the way, anyway, the thing is not working in this case, but see how the pre and post infinity is no longer a cycle, as you can see here. There is definitely something wrong with these keyframes before one, but we can remove them. And you have things that basically loop exactly as they did before. All right, that's cool. So your animation should be 1 to 61. Everything loops nicely, and it goes well. Let's do this. Let's fix this little discrepancy here. Like that, and also here. And everything's fine. And so we can animate and make more complex and more natural animations using the built-in Maya features here. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you have picked up a few useful tips and tricks. Um, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, have fun. Until next time, and see you next video. Bye.